Well, the funniest thing just happened, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, it happened yesterday, but seems like we have a new starting quarterback in the NFL, a Mr. Philip Rivers. And I did not believe the initial reports when they came out because in my mind, I went, well, when the hell is the last time we had Philip Rivers play in the NFL? What year was it? Of course, I went to flogfantasy.com. Typically, that's where I try to pull up the stats because they're all color coordinated. Tells you all the fantasy football stats. But we don't have Philip Rivers loaded into flogfantasy.com. The devs need to add him now. So I just had to type it in on the old Google machine. Last time we saw Philip Rivers in the NFL was 2020. He was 39 years. This was the COVID season. I want to remind y'all, fans were not in the stands the last time that we had Philip Rivers on the football field. It's unbelievable. I've heard some people say oh, this is good for Michael Pittman Jr. This is good for Tyler Ward. And this is good for Jonathan Taylor because Philip Rivers isn't going to have a deep ball, so he's just going to check the ball down consistently. I got news for you. It's bad because defenses know, hey, we don't need to keep two safeties back. If you look at the implied team total that you have right now against the Seattle Seahawks this week, the Indianapolis Colts project to be the second worst offense in the league, only in front of the New York Jets. So how I'm treating it is all of a sudden, it's very similar to the New York Jets. You start the starting running back with Jonathan Taylor, and you bench the receivers. Very similar to the Cleveland Browns. You start Quinshon Judkins with the Cleveland Browns, you bench the receivers. Maybe more so similar with the Browns because I'll play the tight end as well. But yeah, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be impacted a little bit less than Alec Pierce, but don't start either one. Now, let's go ahead. Let's get through the rest of the news that we have as well. All right, let's see. What is there? TJ Hawkinson doesn't practice, obviously. Doesn't mean that he's not going to play. It's Wednesday, and even if you have Hawkinson, I'm sure you're not in the playoffs. Let's see. David Njoku does not practice. This is important for Harold Fannin. I have Harold Fannin on my own team. Harold Fannin will be a borderline top 5 tied into my rankings this week if David Njoku doesn't play. Rome Odunze does get in a limited practice on Wednesday. So Rome was initially listed as week to week last week. So I was operating under the assumption that we for sure did not have Rome here in week 15, but it seems like he may play. If Rome plays, I don't want to start any of the Chicago Bears wide receivers if we could avoid it. I believe, I'll correct this if I'm wrong, but you actually have them going up against a very good Cleveland Browns defense. So yeah, if we can't avoid it, I don't want to start any of the Bears wide receivers. Nick Chubb, Woody Marks, neither of them end up practicing here. So expectations as of now will be Woody Marks is A-OK against the Arizona Cardinals. You play Woody Marks, but obviously he's more exciting if you have no Nick Chubb in comparison if Nick Chubb does play. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't practice. So it does seem like Michael Wilson's going to be somebody you start this week. I will say with this, though, that it's a really tough matchup against the Houston Texans, so don't get super, super excited. CeeDee Lamb gets in a limited practice on Wednesday. So I thought CeeDee Lamb was probably going to miss this week, but there's a chance that he does end up playing. Neither Fields or Tyrod Taylor don't practice on Wednesday. So the third string quarterback that we saw last week has a good shot to be the starter for the Jets this week. And that's maybe the reason why the Jets project to be the worst offense in the league this week. And let's see, Kamara doesn't practice. I'm assuming we don't see Kamara again this season. Let's see, Riley Leonard gets in a full practice. That will be important to note to see if Philip Rivers does indeed start. Tyron Tracy gets in a full practice, so it seems like Tracy is going to be A-OK and Singletary won't be viable. Chris Rodriguez doesn't practice, doesn't matter. I would rather bench him if we can anyway. Rico Dowdle doesn't practice coming out of the bye week. This is very weird. And if Dowdle were to miss, Chuba Hubbard does become somebody that you probably need to go ahead and get in. And I need to apologize. I keep on saying that the Jets project to be the worst offense in the league. Actually, I believe the Raiders project to be the worst offense in the league this week, but I think the Jets are tied with the Indianapolis Colts as the second worst. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's dive into the questions that we have on the site. First one coming from the Real Spartan, looking at Devin Neal or Amari Hampton. I'd go Hampton. The Chargers project to only score 18 points this week. Really tough matchup against the Chiefs, so don't love it, but I'd go in that direction anyway. Wide receiver will be Michael Wilson if Marv misses. And then as well, probably Devin Neal. Now, Marv plays. I think you pivot over to Christian Watson instead. Beto, always happy to see us, says, hey, Mason, I have a bye week. I have 5 wide receivers. Do I drop Higgins or Worthy for a running back handcuff? Week 16, do I go the Bucks, Pats, Vikings, or New Orleans defense? And then 2 kickers that I have no idea what the answer is. Let me real quick go ahead and pull up the week 16 matchups. I do not know those off the top of my head, my friend. So just give me 1 second to do that. Let's go to flockfantasy.com. All right. So we have the Bucks as an option. I know we can look at Zach's team. Zach has Bucky Irving. Who do the Bucks play in week 16? They play at Carolina. The Vikings and the Patriots will be our other 2. We know Danny has Jefferson. So who are the Vikings going up against week 16? Vikings go up against the New York Giants. Patriots. Danny also has Trevion, so we can look at it that way. Trevion, week 16, plays at Baltimore. I would not want the Patriots in that. And then the New Orleans Saints, which I believe Sal has Olave. The New Orleans Saints, week 16, play against the New York Jets. So out of those defenses, I would prefer the Saints DST. And then in terms of dropping Higgins or Worthy, obviously we're talking Jaden Higgins here. It's a double flex format. So I actually think there's a world in which you start Jaden Higgins in week 16. So I would hold on to Higgins. I would hold on to Worthy unless there's going to be a handcuff that you are very, very excited about. But if it's just like a buy Shell Tootin level handcuff, then I would just hold on to what you got. But yeah, out of those DSTs, I would go New Orleans. And let me double check with this before we move on. Ooh, I would for sure go with the New Orleans Saints defense because they also play against the Tennessee Titans in week 17. I was going to tell you to just roster 2 defenses, pick a defense that you like the week 16 matchup for and a defense that you like the week 17 matchup for. But if you're going to get to go with the Saints defense against the Jets and the Titans, you probably go in that direction. But I really appreciate you. And yeah, see you in the chat as well. Thank you so much for everything. I'm going to send you over another free start set question. So when you're not on that bye next week, we can hopefully go ahead and check it out for you. Now, let's move this over to Guzman. Tight ends between Tyler Warren and Dallas Goedert. Honestly, I'm going to have to look at the projection. There's a good shot I'd rather have Goddard over Tyler Warren now, to be honest. And then in the flex, you're going to go with Devonta Smith pretty easily. But I know a lot of people are going to say like, oh, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, these guys get a bump up with Rivers because he's going to be just checking the ball down. But the holdup that I'm going to have is again, the Colts project to be a bottom 3 offense this week against the Seattle Seahawks. Even if the quarterback checks the ball down a bit more, the Seahawks are going to be able to abuse the Indianapolis Colts offense. Now, DJ Winters says, hope all is well. Little lost in what wide receiver. And to be honest, who to start overall in the team. Well, let's check it out. So we're at Love versus Mariota. So the Commanders have decent projections this week, surprisingly. Love has to play at Denver. How much was Mariota running the ball? 55 rushing yards in week 13. 49 rushing yards the week prior. The Commanders project score just as many points as the Packers this week. I'm going to be honest with you, Chief. Projections probably would end up liking Mariota over Love. I think it's pretty close. I would have a very difficult time telling you to do so, though. Then looking at receiver, you have no London this week. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take DK Metcalf. And then between Brian Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Jordan Addison, I'd go Terry McLaurin. So if you were starting Terry, I would probably go Love, because the last thing you want to do is put all your eggs in the basket that just got shut out against the Minnesota Vikings this past week. So it'd be very tough for me to tell you to start Mariota and Terry. I think Terry's probably a startable wide receiver out of this list. Like, no part of me wants to start Brian Thomas. But yeah, I'm not really excited either way. Now, Elias with this start set, we're looking at 2 flexes. We have Brandon Cooks on the squad. What the hell are we doing with Brandon Cooks? Alec Pierce is unstartable with Phillip Rivers. Judkins, you have to start out of this list. And then I'd probably go Ladd McConkey as the other guy. But feeling horrible about it. Ladd McConkey has been horrendous. Like, if y'all saw the Flock League video, y'all saw that Corey had a guaranteed win, and Ladd McConkey this past week goes and scores 2.2 points. And the Los Angeles Chargers project currently to only score 18 this week. So the Chargers are in a tough spot against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to be excited, but like, what else? What's the other option? You play Alec Pierce? No way in hell we're doing that. So, sure. I think you probably end up playing Ladd here. As painful it is. Now, other thread says who to drop for the Kansas City Chiefs DST. You can't. Dear God, you don't really have an easy drop. You have a good-ass team. If you had to drop a running back, it'd be Kamani Vidal. If you had to drop a wide receiver, it'd be Luther Burden. If you had to drop a tight end, it would be Colson Loveland. But I don't want to. If you had to drop a quarterback, it would be Jackson Dart. But I don't want to drop any of those players. I'm going to be completely honest, and people are probably really going to hate this and completely disagree with me, which is fine. I don't feel great about saying it. But I think you may go ahead and honestly drop Kamani Vidal on a team that's as good as this if you needed to open up a roster spot. Because you already had Amari Hampton coming in and seeing a considerable amount of snaps, and that's only going to go in one direction, in my opinion. And I don't know if you're going to play Kamani Vidal ever over Bijan, Judkins, or Trevion. So with that in mind, he would maybe be my drop. But again, I do not feel good about saying that at all. Okay. Now, S. Russ Bus, here at running back. Tyron Tracy got in the full practice, so you're going to play Tyron Tracy. Giants project score a ton of points. You play Kittle at tight end, and then in the flex, you go with Harold Fannin if David Njoku misses. If David Njoku plays and Marvin Harrison plays, you can play Marv. But my expectations right now are you probably have no David Njoku. While at the same time, I don't think Marv plays this week. At least I'd be surprised if he did. Okay. Now, Kakoa, here at running back. When you go Amari and Hampton under the assumption that Dowdle plays. Wide receiver, you go Lamb and Olave and Nico and one of the flexes. The only swap that you could possibly make is if Dowdle were to miss. Hubbard would have literally every single touch versus Amari Hampton, who I think will lead the backfield in Los Angeles, but it's going to be in a really tough matchup against the Chiefs. And Kamani Vidal will still see some work. So if Dowdle were to miss entirely, I think you could pivot to Chuba Hubbard there. Now, Jared, quarterback between Burrow, Allen, May. You don't overthink it. You play Josh Allen. Nobody has that close. I mean, nobody has a ceiling anywhere close to his. I think CeeDee Lamb's probably ended up playing based off him practicing. Plan A is you go CeeDee Lamb in at wide receiver, and then and then Bucky Irving in the flex. And if CeeDee Lamb ends up missing, then you pivot over to Jalen Waddle in his spot. Now, Alki says, opponent has Hurts, Puka, Rice, Hall, Bucky, Ferguson, and Aaron Jones. Okay. It sucks that they have Puka this week. And you're going to have a sweat tomorrow night, too. So wide receiver Rome got in a limited practice, but it's not a guarantee whatsoever that he ends up playing. Honestly, so here's the thing. Keenan is a garbage play. Jaden Higgins, you could throw out there, and he has a decent ceiling, don't get me wrong, but the floor is pretty damn low. No way you play Keenan Allen with how bad he's been and the Chargers projecting to score 18 points. No way you play Adonai Mitchell when the Jets are on their third QB. No way you play the Dallas receiver regardless of if CeeDee Lamb plays or not. So for me, with this setup, I think if Mike Evans were to play, you play Mike Evans tomorrow night, which Mike Evans could be a 0, but all those other names we just mentioned could be a 0 as well. So I'm not asking you to feel good about it, but I think one of these spots, you bank on whoever the starting Bears receiver is. If Rome plays, you play Rome. If Rome misses, you play Luther Burden. And then in that other spot, if Evans plays on Thursday, you may end up just having to put in Mike Evans. And then if Evans doesn't play, I guess I would honestly maybe go Jaden Higgins. I know Keenan's points per game have been higher this year, but he is just trending in a horrible direction. Okay. Now, Dreams, quarterback, we're going to go with Burrow over Dak. Running back, Bucky, RJ Harvey. Wide receiver, actually, we may have to think about Judkins versus Harvey. A wide receiver, Lamb, if he plays. Nico in the flex. Tight end, you're going to play. I would go Loveland if you were to have no Rome. If Rome plays, you can pivot to Schultz. And if there was a pivot to be made, it would be playing Quinshon Judkins over RJ Harvey. But obviously, RJ Harvey had the role last week. It's just going to be a tough matchup this week. Now, Carts, here running back, you auto start Kyron, you auto start Jacobs. Wide receiver, you auto start Chase and Igbuka over Evans. And then in the flex, it's Trevion easily. And then your last spots down between Gainwell, Charbonnet, Algier, Corum, Singletary, Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall. Tyron Tracy got in a full practice today, so I'm going to assume that Tyron Tracy is playing. So in that instance, it's not easy to tell you to play Devin Singletary. And then going over and looking at like Gainwell at the very minimum has a receiving role. So I would say probably what I would do here is Evans if he plays tomorrow. And if Evans doesn't play tomorrow, then you probably just go ahead and put in Kenneth Gainwell. Okay. Now Yeti with our next one. Here in the flex, between Blake Corum, Kyle Monungai, Chris Rodriguez, Byshell Tootin, Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon, I'm going to be operating under the assumption that Avon Achane is going to be playing this week until we are told otherwise. So if that is the case, not super excited about Ollie Gordon or Jalen Wright. And in that instance, I would probably go Kyle Monangai and Chris Godwin. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Chris Rodriguez is a play here. And sure, if you really wanted to do it, I'm not going to fault you for it. But I don't really see the ceiling with Chris Rodriguez. No receiving role. And he's in an offense that just got shut out. Okay. Let me refresh this, see if we have any more questions. Oh, okay, crap. We got a bunch. Let me tell the fiance. It's going to be a long night. Okay. Now, it's JP. Wide receiver. I would play Igbokwe here. I know he's been garbage, but maybe Tristan Wirf's back in. The offense is better. Bowers projects being the worst offense in the league this week. You still got to play him over Loveland. And then going down to the flex, I would go Luther Burden. If you were to have no Rome Odunze, and if Rome plays, I think you can actually pivot over to Jaden Higgins, who's going to be in a really good matchup. Okay. Now, our next question is going to be from Grumpalot. RJ Harvey, ETN, Brees, or Judkins? I can just pull up my rankings and tell you exactly where I have these players ranked. So ETN is, off the top of my head, going to be the guy you need to go with because the Jags are just super heavy favorites. And then obviously we did have the very positive usage of ETN this past week with the Bichelle Tootin fumble. I have ETN at RB14. I have Brees at RB15. I have Judkins at RB16. And I have Harvey at RB18. I have Brees, Judkins, and RJ Harvey all in D tier, all as guys that you can kind of go back and forth with, and I'll probably flip my mind 100 times before Sunday. But I do have ETN, the tier ahead of these other players, and I think you probably got to stand by that, again, just given how well the offense projects, and the role looks pretty damn good. Okay. Now, JC, running back between Hampton, Brees Hall, Tyler Algier. I would probably go Brees with the safe work, but you can say with Amari, like if it wasn't, the Chargers project to be a very bad offense in that matchup against the Chiefs. Tyler Warren's at tight end, and then in the flex, it's going to be Michael Wilson with no Marvin Harrison. And if Marv plays, pivot over to Amarian. Now, Damian says, thanks for all your help so far. Really like the advice this week. I'm facing elimination. Happy holidays, bro. Happy holidays, my friend. Really appreciate you and wishing you the best of luck. Between Burrow and Hurts, I'm going to go Burrow. The Philadelphia Eagles project score just as many points as the Bengals, and obviously Hurts has more rushing upside. The holdup that I'm going to have is it is a spot where I'd assume that the Eagles can just run the ball against the Raiders, where I think Cincy is going to have to throw it. Going over to wide receiver, if CeeDee Lamb plays, you go Lamb and Igbokwe. And then down in the flex, I think you would take Jordan Addison. Now, if Lamb were to miss, then I think you put Romeo Doubs in his spot. But let me go ahead and send you over a free start set. That way you can follow up next week after we win this one. Jay Gonzalez says, congrats on the bye. Appreciate you, my friend. Good luck in BBM. Good luck. Playoffs are here, and I really need help. Who should we go with? Running back, you play Judkins and Henderson over Genty. Like the Browns offense projects score more points than the Raiders this week. Obviously, Genty has a larger receiving role, but he hasn't been any more efficient. Wide receiver, I'd go Olave, Tedero McMillan in the flex. And then tight end between Harold Fannin and Jake Ferg. If you have no David Njoku, I would rather go Harold Fannin. So, yeah, I think you go Fannin over Ferg. Under the assumption, again, that you have no Njoku. If Njoku plays, then you may have to reevaluate. Now, Bitter Hornet, really appreciate you, as always. Let me make sure over the next few weeks you have all... I know you don't want to ask start set questions. I get that, my friend. Okay, it's not letting me click your name anymore. Maybe I can go back like this and click it. Yeah, there we go. Just make sure you have enough vouchers. It says, picked up Wright. HN trending towards playing. Should we drop Wright and pick back up Brian Robinson? If team misses time, do I drop Pearsall for Florida Jaden Higgins? I would prefer Jaden Higgins. between the two of them, looking at the setup now, I would say, yeah, you probably can drop Jalen Wright for Brian Robinson just in case McCaffrey were to go down this week. Then obviously you can pivot over to Brian Robinson next week. But honestly, I would wait maybe just until tomorrow so we can get the practice report with Devon Achane and see the way that he is trending. And then going down to wide receivers, I do have Jaden Higgins ranked ahead of Ricky Pearsall at this point. So that would be the pivot that I would want to make there. But yeah, appreciate you as always, my guy. And Zafel here at running back, Kyle Monangai, Kenneth Walker. You go Walker. Seahawks are massive favorites. Just going to run the ball a ton. And then in the flex between Ladd McConkey and Jacoby Myers, honestly, it's not an easy call whatsoever. The Jags project to score, I want to say 10 more points than the Chargers, or 9.5. And Myers is getting more volume than Ladd McConkey at this point. So sadly, I think I'm going to have to tell you to go with Jacoby Myers there. NJB says, made the 20-team playoffs. Do I unleash 9? Oh my gosh, brother. First off, congrats. Second off, I understand where you're coming from. The Minnesota Vikings offense projects to score significantly more points than the Arizona Cardinals this week. But Brissett has to go up against Houston Texans, and the Texans haven't allowed a quarterback to be a top 12 option this season. And that game is in Houston as well. So Jacoby Brissett has the toughest matchup you could possibly ask for. But even with that in mind, I'd still probably go Jacoby Brissett over J.J. McCarthy. But it's a lot closer than I think people would want to give it credit to be. Now, Nick Ferb here at wide receiver. You play Tedero McMillan, J-Mo in the flex, and then at tight end you play Tyler Warren. I think you can bench Ladd McConkey with how bad Ladd has been, plus the really tough matchup against KC. Okay. Now, fair deals with our next one. Running back between Tracy, Corum, Genty, Kamara. We're going to go Genty, not feel great about it. And then in the flex, your wide receivers are garbage, so you're going to play Tracy. And then I would go Tyler Warren over Colson Loveland at tight end. Like, again, I'm treating the Indianapolis Colts very similar to the Cleveland Browns. You put the starting running back in, you put the starting tight end in, you bench the wide receivers, and that's going to be about it. Now, W. French. So who do I start if Lamb is out? And in the flex, also, do we go with Kelsey or likely / Andrews? No, you definitely play Travis Kelsey there. Not close. I know Kelsey dropping balls. Kelsey looks washed. I get it. But still, at the same time, the man's the tight end 6 in points per game this season. And there in the flex, we are looking at Waddle, Igbuka, Harvey, Oh, it's Barkley. Not even remotely close. And if Lamb's out, you go Waddle over Igbuka. But yeah, Barkley is a very strong option this week. Like, I have Barkley on my team. I have a bye, so I'm not going to be able to start him. But this would be the week I would want to start Saquon Barkley, to be honest. Okay. Now, Nick Ferb here at quarterback between Lamar and May. You go May. He's just been so much better. But Lamar has the matchup of dreams. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Lamar's week. And then in the flex, I'm not starting Igbuka over any of these running backs. I think even with the tough matchup, I probably should rank RJRV over Judkins because RJRV is at least going to give you the receiving role. Now, Bitter Hornet says, grab the Niners last week, dropped Daniels and Caleb for Purdy, Mariota, picked up Singletary, dropped Pearsall for Burden. I would drop Ricky Pearsall for Luther Burden. And honestly, I don't like that you dropped Caleb for Mariota. I think I would maybe make that swap back. Obviously, the Bears are running the ball consistently, and it's not like the Bears have the best matchups in the world. But Caleb will still run the ball some. I know Mariota's been running it more, so. Can y'all please spam the chat? Who would y'all rather have on your team? You're going to have two quarterbacks. You're going to play the matchups between them going into the future. Who would you rather have between Caleb Williams and Marcus Mariota? Please let me know in the chat. Caleb. Yeah, it looks like everybody in the chat also agrees. Go Caleb, my guy. So I would drop Mariota. I'd pick back up Caleb. And then I would drop Pearsall and I'd pick up Luther Burden. But it does seem like there's a chance Rome Odunze plays this week. So if that does end up happening, then Burden does take a negative hit, of course. Now, Beto says, thanks for the input. The running back handcuff I was considering was Brian Robinson. Is he worth it over Worthy / Jaden Higgins, or do we leave it as of now? Ooh, okay, so let's start your lineup as if it's week 16, right? If it's week 16, running back, you're going to have Gibbs, Bijan in there. Wide receiver, you're going to have Lamb, Terry. In the flex, you'll have Ash and Genty. And here's the scenario, right? Like, if Kamara is back next week and Devin Neal's no longer startable, it's not like we know for sure we're going to want to play Brian Thomas over Jaden Higgins, Xavier Worthy. So I think I actually, in a double flex format in this spot, would rather have these wide receivers over B-Rob. Maybe if it was like early in the season, it'd be different, but you only have you're running out of time for a McCaffrey injury with Brian Robinson, right? And that'd be a big holdup that I would have. Alex says that BBM bonus just hit the account. Ooh, let me check out my Underdog account. I will say this real quick, just for anybody watching. I should probably make an announcement in a YouTube video because I know people are going to care. At least I'd assume people care. Some people care a lot. Some people don't care at all. But I sent out a screenshot of our Underdog advance rate. And obviously our redraft stuff, like with the Flock League, is all very public. Y'all can see every start set decision I make. Y'all can see every draft pick I make, every trade I make. And we absolutely are crushing in the Flock League, back-to-back years with the bye. And in our Underdog basketball drafts, it's all very public as well. You can just go to bbm.com, type in my username and see everything there. They just pull all the data. And we are crushing our Underdog drafts as well. Very good / very luck. You want to call it good, you want to call it luck, whatever it may be. This was a good year for us. It was a good year. It was a lucky year. Obviously, now we need to get lucky in the Underdog playoff tournaments for us to really win something and to win some life-changing money. But our advance rates were phenomenal. We have a lot of tickets to the dance. Let's see if we can actually take it down. Okay. Now, LCU Figo. Here, tight ends. Tyler Warren, Kincaid. Give me Tyler Warren. And then in the flex, god dang. I play Evans over Cora Monungai, Chris Rodriguez. I would go Mike Evans if he plays tomorrow and Brian Thomas. And if Mike Evans doesn't play, you pivot to Kyle Monungai. But if Rico Dowdle doesn't play, then you pivot to Chuba Hubbard. Because obviously if Dowdle were to miss, which Dowdle missed practice this week, all of a sudden Hubbard would be, I mean, just an absolute jam. Now, just Pharrell, here for the flex. You're probably not going to have T. Higgins this week, so I think you probably end up having to play Jalen Warren. But I'm going to be honest with the Chief, no part of me would ever want to do that. He split the backfield pretty much 50-50 last week with Gainwell, but I think you probably just got to play him. Which, side note, it is funny to think back at the beginning of the year with me giving people crap about playing Gainwell. I'm sorry, not playing Gainwell. Them rostering Gainwell. Like week 2, week 3, I was going like, why the hell would you ever roster Kenneth Gainwell? And I've had Gainwell on my own team for like a month. Okay. Now, J Panda. Here running back. You play Bijan. And between Trevion and Amarian, I may play Trevion given the matchup that Amarian has. Wide receiver, you play Tedero, McMillan, Igbuka. Tight end, you play Tyler Warren. Actually, I'd go Jake Ferg over Tyler Warren. And then in the flex, you go ahead and you play Amarian Hampton. Nemesis says, nervous on Hurts. Should we play Mary? No. I know Hurts hasn't been great. Don't get me wrong. But even with Hurts being much worse as of late, even with the 0.4 points he scored this past week, he's still the QB7 in points per game. And he has a good matchup. You play Jalen Hurts. And at tight end, Ed Warren playing all season. But should we play Strange and then Harvey or Judkins? Full BBR format, I'd probably go Harvey. And then with Britton Strange or Tyler Warren, the Jags project scored 12 more points than the Colts this week. Obviously, Britton Strange has been decent, especially Parker Washington misses. But I'm going to be honest with the Chief. If it was me, I'm an idiot, so I probably would go ahead and play Tyler Warren. And oh crap, did we miss anything? No, we're on daddy time. Okay. Now, here for the flex, it's the second round of the playoffs. I want to go Evans. I will say, if you play Mike Evans, put him in a wide receiver, move Rashee Rice down to the flex. Just get, oh, no, you can't play Mike Evans. Zay Flowers gets the Cincinnati Bengals. Ravens project score 27.5 points. Mike Evans' snaps could be severely capped. So, I would have a difficult time for you. Like, I think you bench Mike Evans. You hope he plays well. That way you could go ahead and you could hopefully play Mike Evans in week 16. But week 15, I think it'd be very thin to play him. Now, Nick Ferb here at wide receiver. I'd go Tedero McMillan over Igbuka. And then in the flex, honestly, not an easy call. Sutton, Christian Watson. I'm going to have to pull up my rankings. I think, here's my guess. I have every single one of these wide receivers ranked in the same tier, and I'm not going to know who to tell you. So let's pull this up. I have Christian Watson at wide receiver 23, Cortland Sutton wide receiver 24, Terry McLaurin wide receiver 26, Igbuka wide receiver 21. So I technically have Igbuka as the slight edge over these guys, but they are almost all back to back. To the point where it is extremely difficult for me to know who you should go with. I think you for sure play Tedero McMillan. Now, Frog and Flocks, to start 2, Bowers, Jennings, Dowdle, Myers, Diggs. I would go Bowers and Diggs, to be honest. Like, I think I'm going to have to end up lowering Dowdle down our rankings based off him missing practice this week. And again, with Bowers, it's not a super exciting situation having the Raiders project so poorly this week, but I don't know how you could get away from, like, how are you going to play Jacoby Myers over Brock Bowers? I couldn't. Now, scenarios, tight ends, give me Tyler Warren over Brenton Strange. And then in the flex, I'd go Devonta Smith over Ladd, Mike Evans, Khalil Shakir. Nerd Space, happy to see a running back. You play Bucky, Javonte, easy. Wide receiver, Olave, tight end, Strange. And in the flex, Devonta Smith. And then in that last flex spot, if Mike Evans plays tomorrow, I'd go Mike Evans. If Mike Evans misses and Rico Dowdle plays, then you go ahead and you play Rico Dowdle. And then if Evans and Dowdle both miss, then worst case scenario, you can play Devon Vele. But again, I would really view that as worst case scenario. Okay. Now, Bitter Hornet says, concerned about Tyler Warren. The waivers are likely Theo, Schultz, Loveland, and Gesicki. If you wanted to pick up one of those waiver wire options, this week you do have a really, really strong matchup for Theo Johnson. And there's an outside chance that they decide to make Jackson Dart stay a little more in the pocket, throwing the ball and not run the ball as much. Which, if that were to be the case, maybe the passing volume goes up in this offense. So I personally would probably roll with Tyler Warren. But if you wanted to pivot, I think the pivot would be Theo Johnson. Can you all spam the chat? Because we've had a bunch of questions about Tyler Warren, and maybe I'm underestimating exactly how big of a deal this is. Again, my take on it is the wide receivers are unstartable here, but would y'all rather play Tyler Warren or Theo Johnson this week? Tyler Warren or Theo Johnson, who would you rather go with? Okay. Okay. Warren, Theo, Warren. Yeah, it looks like most people are still on the Warren side, my guy. So I would roll with it. I have not checked any of the underdog projections this week, to just be completely honest with you. I can double check to make, I would be surprised if they have like a Tyler Warren projection out there right now. They have Tyler Warren higher, lower 35.5 receiving yards. An additional 2.29x for him to score a touchdown. They have Theo Johnson higher, lower 34.5 receiving yards, but a lot more likely to score a touchdown. So they have it as a very similar spot. Okay. Now, Berto, here, wide receiver. Wandale, Michael Wilson, easy starts this week. Then down in the flexes, I think you probably end up going with Amarian and Trevion Henderson. I mean, the running backs are good enough where we can avoid the question marks that you have with guys like Debo, Igbuka, Sutton, all having them. Okay. Now, Castillo, with our next question, says, who do I drop since Evans is coming back? Ooh, you may have a tough time dropping somebody here. If you had to drop somebody from the skill position, like your worst running back, if you had to drop somebody, it would be Kyle Monangai. Your worst wide receiver, if you had to drop somebody, it would be Mike Evans. You only have one quarterback. You only have one tight end. So I'm going to be honest with you, Chief. I would probably just drop Mike Evans. I mean, you can drop Kyle Monangai if you want. Actually, I'd probably drop Kyle Monangai. But it's very close. Okay. Now, Big Money Nick, here for the flex, you play Igbuka. Here's the holdup that I'm going to have. Like, you would go Woody Marks probably over Igbuka if you knew that Woody Marks was 100% good to go with the knee and Nick Chubb was 100% ruled out. But we don't have the guarantee on either one of those things. So it's tough to say that as of right now. So if Igbuka's playing tomorrow night, you may just have to play him if we don't have all the information. Okay. Now, Big Rats has made the playoffs. Please help me get that win. Appreciate you, my friend. Here, quarterback Purdy versus Caleb. I believe the Niners project to score 28.5 points this week, which should be one of the highest scoring marks that we have of any player. I'm sorry, of any team. But they should be able to run the ball consistently. I like the spot more than Caleb. I think you go Purdy over Caleb. Wide receiver, Michael Wilson. If Marv misses, tight end, you go Kittle. And then in the flex, you go Olave. But if Marv plays, you pivot to Jamison Williams instead of Michael Wilson. Okay. Now, F. Murphy with our next question. Here at wide receiver, it's honestly Jacoby Myers kind of easily with how well that offense projects under the assumption that T. Higgins misses. But honestly, I'd probably be surprised if T. Higgins does end up playing. And then in the flex, I would go ahead and I'd probably go Luther Burden. The only swap that I'd make is if Rome Odunze does end up playing, then at that point you could possibly pivot to Jaden Higgins instead in a really good matchup. Okay. Now, sad Saints fan. Running back between Ginty, Hampton, Henderson. Honestly, I'd probably go Hendo with how bad the matchup is for Hampton. Wide receiver. It's between Igbuka and Metcalf. I'd probably go Igbuka, and then I'd go Hampton in the flex. You have a lot of depth with that team. Noob Complex says, Game 2 playoffs in a 16-team league. Rome's also on the waiver wire. Going up against the top player with Gibbs and JSN. Thanks. That is going to be a brutal spot if they had Gibbs going this week. That game has an over-under 55.5 points. There are going to be so many points scored. Okay. So 16-team league, it's going to be very tough to find two flag spots that we really like. So I would say David Montgomery is the play. Actually, if Dowdle misses practice tomorrow, you pivot to Chuba Hubbard. And then in the flexes, I think you plan on Sutton and Godwin. But again, if Dowdle misses practice tomorrow, I think we assume that Hubbard's role is very strong this week. And then in that case, you pivot to Chuba Hubbard there instead of David Montgomery. Okay. No, I love you, Mason. Love you too, my friend. Says 14-team league. Just curious how you'd set the lineup with no Lamb. Okay. I would go Judkins, Harvey. Wide receiver, Rice, Flowers against Cincy. Tight end, McBride, flex, Gadsden. But if Lamb plays, then just replace Gadsden with Lamb in this lineup. Then another lineup that we have to look at here. Wandale versus Tetaroa McMillan. You can play Tetaroa, but dear God. I really want to tell you to get Wandale in here. The matchup for Wandale, so damn strong. But it would mean that you're having to bench like RJ Harvey. I would probably go RJ Harvey here just because he's a running back with a guaranteed starting role that has the receiving usage as well. But Wandale Robinson's in a phenomenal matchup. But I really appreciate y'all hanging out with us, ladies and gentlemen. I am wishing you the best of luck. Zan the Casio, my friend. Please just let me know if you have that start sit question in the chat. Tristan says, why did you ban me? I literally don't know who you are. And if you're typing in the chat, you're not banned. But much love, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. I'm very much rooting for all of y'all. this week. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say. I'm not going to be sweating this week too much, because the issue is, like, with the underdog teams, I showed y'all that tweet already. Like, I have, what was the amount of teams I advanced? I had a 25.2% advance rate across the board, and with some wild card spots because not all the tournaments filled, I advanced 26.5% of my teams, which is well ahead of baseline. Baseline 17.2, so did very, very good. So I have 167 teams in the dance. So, like, it's 1 week too early for me to start looking at my underdog teams. Like, I'm going to be honest with y'all, I've not looked at a single underdog team all year. Like, I have 167 of them advancing. What the hell? Am I going to sit there and spend an entire day looking at each one? I'll start looking at them whenever, probably next week, because next week I'll probably only have like 15, 20 left. So I don't really have any, like, I can't really sweat anything underdog related this week. And at the same time, I'm on bye. So, Teresa, go to bbmd.com. And then you can just type in that. And that's like the portfolio view. It's completely free. Yeah. Anybody, you can just type in bbmdb.com. And it's free. I'm not affiliated with them whatsoever. It's just a cool free site that I use. Only affiliation I have is they follow me on Twitter. Zandy Castillo says, it was Igbuka, Evans, Rico, Diggs, or McLaurin. I need a wide receiver and 2 flex spots. I would go with Igbuka, Diggs, and probably McLaurin. I don't know if we can play Rico at this point with him missing practice and with the Hubbard usage. But I think that's all I got for y'all. I really appreciate you. If y'all have a couple underdog teams in the dance, I'm wishing you the best of luck. Unless you're going up against me, then I'm wishing you the worst of luck. And obviously, I want all of y'all in your redraft teams to do well. But much love. I'm going to go watch Landman with a fiance, then hit the hay. But I'll see y'all in the live stream after the game.